rise in the R. And so we've been waiting for the R to rise as the mobility has increased. And Professor Hilo has actually noticed that over the last 2 weeks, the R has been rising about 0.01 per day. So we were, so it's a gradual increase, but it has now risen above 1. And we can also see that in the 17 LGUs, some of the LGUs have already risen above 1, others are still below 1. But you can see that it's a wave that is building. So when people ask, well, when is the wave coming? The wave is here. We just have to, the question now is, can we keep the wave from crashing over our healthcare system?
Okay, Father, we've been saying R naught for a long time already. We may be taking for granted that people already understand what it is, but let me recap a bit for people who may not understand. And if we got this right, so R naught refers to the rate of infection. Tama po ba? Basically, if you get infected, how many people you can infect? Also, that's what we're saying.
That's right. So if you have 10 people and the R is 1, then the 10 people will infect 10 other people. If the R is greater than 1, then the 10 can infect 11. And slowly the 11 will infect 12. So you can see slowly that once the R rises above 1, which it is now doing, what we will see is an acceleration of the increase. You see, this is why we are particularly vigilant and particularly careful, especially since Simbang Gabi will begin tomorrow. So the social mixing and the Simbang Gabi, just the celebration, that is increased mobility, that's increased social mixing. So the R is already above 1, which is why we are expecting that the R will continue to increase. Only because there's nothing socially at this time that will slow it down. So we can increase mask wearing, and we will try to do that. Our contact tracing is also going to have to ramp up. But the question is whether or not those two going up can offset the greater impact which we expect from the increased social contact and social mobility, because there's different forces that are at play. And so the question you have to do is, if the social mobility goes up so much, then increasing mask wearing and contact tracing will not be enough to offset that increase. So we will see
higher. So higher than 1, the slope is going up. The higher the number, the steeper the slope. Lower than 1, it's going down. Now, speaking of other terms that we're now hearing, I see Guido mentioned this, the unflattening. Unflattening. Is that just a euphemism for a cresting wave? Is that just euphemism that we're preparing for another wave?
So again, the wave is here. It's not that we're preparing for another wave. The wave is here. So the question is, how tall is this wave going to be? Is it going to be a tsunami, or is it going to be just a ripple? But the wave is here. You will start seeing increases in cases over the next couple of weeks. The question is, how fast will those cases increase, and how much will they increase? We have done some initial, and we have imagined possible scenarios for the wave. And if this wave looks like the wave in June and July, then we expect the same numbers, the same number of daily cases we will attain the same number of cases at the end of January that we reached at the end of July. So you can just to give you a parallel of the way the wave moved the last time it came.
However, if let's just assume that people's mobility will decrease after the holidays, do you think that end of January scenario, which is similar to what we experienced in August, for example, do you think that's not going to happen? Is it safe to say?
That's exactly correct. So if, and we have talked about this in OCTA, just with our modeling work, we have asked the question, if after the new year, the government began to limit mobility again, could we prevent the wave from cresting at the end of January? Certainly that's the case. We can do that. So the question really is, as the R goes up, we have suggested that if the R goes up above 1.1 by the new year, that the national government should consider limiting mobility more in the NCR to prevent that wave from really rising.
Father, you mean if 1.1 by January, we should go to NGCQ? Is that correct?
No, we're not saying that. We're just saying, for example, increasing the length of the curfew. So there are things we can do without going into MECQ. We can talk about, can we start with, we limit the number of people in a bus? Can we increase the curfew at night? There are things we can do to prevent the MECQ. So in OCTA, what we would like to do is we would like to prevent an MECQ in February. So the question is to prevent a lockdown. You can see around the world they've been doing lockdowns already. We are still in a position to prevent a lockdown if we act early enough. If after Christmas and after the New Year and people are very tired and very fat and very, lots of gifts, can we begin to roll back? We call it rollback. Can we roll back some of the opening to allow the R to come down?
Professors, the President Duterte is having a meeting with his cabinet, and one of the issues that, it was agreed in principle, that's the latest report I got now, is that they will be pilot testing or they will have a dry run of face-to-face classes in areas with a low risk of transmission. Do you think this might roll back gains in the transmission?
Well,
do you recommend that they push
Professor Guido like to address that, or I can do that?
Whoever is okay, Professor.
Yeah, okay.
Would you recommend?
Well, if they do it in low-risk areas, of course the risk is not quite significant. So, they can always pilot test it. And I don't know the exact specifications that they're having for face-to-face classes. Will they be reducing the number of students inside the classroom? Will there be social distancing? Of course, we know that, and it has been shown that kids and minors can actually be spreaders, because previous studies have shown that maybe they're not, but more recent studies have shown that minors can be spreaders as well, and that could be a problem because, as we know, the thing with minors is it's harder for us na pagsabihan sila to wear face masks. They will probably wear face masks, but sometimes they may not be so conscious of what they're doing, like playing with their hands. Their hands could be dirty. At least adults must maintindihan natin the logic behind wearing face masks. So, but we're not exactly opposing this for low risk areas. And I think eventually we have to move in that direction anyway. So we're interested to see what will happen in these, sort of tests that they're going to be conducting in certain low-risk areas.
In some countries where they open schools, they are using plexiglass dividers, but there's some controversy on the usefulness of those dividers for containing the virus. Would you recommend the use of those plexiglass dividers?
Well, it really depends, because if transmission is primarily through droplets, then the plexiglass dividers would be more effective. But there is data now that says yes, it's from aerosols, which means it is from smaller particles that are simply staying in the air. And little children, when they are playing, are going to be coughing, there's a lot more aerosolization. So the question now actually is, in the context of the Philippines, where it's warmer than in the States, where our children are more crowded because, teacher to student ratio is much, much higher here in the Philippines than it is in the West. So how are we going to control for density of students in the classroom and making sure that, when they pass each other, they are not touching each other and giving each other a high five and transmitting virus that way. So there are added challenges, but throughout the world, different societies have tried to see if they could reintroduce face-to-face. So I don't think we are opposed in principle to that. Again, it's a matter of timing and place, right? So you don't want to do that in the middle of a wave. So as we are talking primarily about the wave, we would say, well, you have to pick a province or a region which is relatively cold and see if we can test it there.
But I remember
speaking of aerosolization, and we're as you pointed out, we're practically on the eve of the start of Simbang Gabi. I remember you were theorizing why are religious gatherings and masses and so on events for spreading, and you mentioned singing and a lot of singing and a lot of people breathing out and so on. What do you expect, and what should be the practices? What should be reminders to our churches, to our chapels, to our churchgoers heading into Simbang Gabi? And for that matter, I wanted to ask, what is the policy? Are there protocols that are being cascaded from the leadership of the church?
So the Archbishop of Manila, his office, has released guidelines for Simbang Gabi with regards to social distancing. So I will speak here because sa UST, I'm actually going to celebrate the Simbang Gabi on Wednesday night. And we are going to have it two places. So inside the church, but the larger one at 4 o'clock in the morning is going to be outside. So we're actually having the Simbang Gabi outside in the main square of the university where there's significant space and there's significant ventilation. So I think the idea is make sure the social distancing is in place. You have to decrease the density. Ideally outside, people still will have masks. So if they're singing, they're probably going to be singing behind their mask, which will significantly prevent aerosolization and droplet emission. So there are ways that can be done to try to mitigate the transmission spread.
Well, Father Nick and Professor Guido, we just need to go into a break. We do hope you can stay with us because we have some more questions for you after the break. So please stay with us.
Welcome back to the Chiefs. We're still with two members of the OCTA Research Group, Father Nick Austriaco of UST and Professor Guido Davino. Father, mahilig po ako magluto, Father. I heard you're developing. You're a microbiologist and you're trying to develop a vaccine against COVID based on yeast. Can you
Yes,
tell us more about it?
so I have spent the last 25 years of my life as a yeast molecular biologist. I was trained at MIT to do yeast molecular biology, and it became clear to me over the last few months that here in the Philippines, because of our infrastructure, because of our temperature, we will struggle with vaccines. So then I read a paper a month and a half ago that showed that yeast could be used to deliver molecules to the body. And so he said, oh, why not deliver parts of the COVID-19 virus? And that's what we're actually doing. So we have begun a project to take a yeast that you can buy at Watson's. So if you go to Watson's, you can buy a yeast for 34 pesos. And the one pill with the many yeast, and we will take that yeast and we will genetically engineer that yeast so that yeast will produce parts of the COVID.
Just to clarify, this is the medicinal yeast. It's the yeast supplement. It's not the yeast that we use for baking.
No, exactly. It's the yeast. It's the probiotic yeast. It's the probiotic yeast. But believe it or not, the two yeasts are very similar. We have made beer in my lab with both.
Yes.
So we can make beer from the food supplement. But what we can do is my hope is to make this yeast produce COVID-19 particles in your body that will allow the Filipino basically to take, you can put it in your milk every morning and then drink it, and it will stimulate an immune response. And so if this works, no refrigerator, no injection, no healthcare worker,
This is similar to brewer's yeast. It is brewer's yeast.
It's the relative. So brewers is called
Saccharomyces beer.
SCI, and this one is Saccharomyces boulardii. We've been studying both for 15 years, so this is my area actually.
So, Father, tell me if I'm getting this right. What you mean is that the delivery system is not prone to spoilage, and that's the advantage of the yeast delivery
Yeah,
system.
because you just put the yeast in a packet, and you sell the packet for maybe 5 or 10 pesos to Watson's, and then every morning you add it to your milk, and some people say they will add it to their beer, and then you drink it, and the idea is that over a period of time you would build an immunity to it. So there have been animal studies that show that something similar works in animals. So we are now my lab in the States, and then I'm working in a lab here at UST. We are developing that. It will take a year to see if it's even feasible, but it's one of those things that's crazy enough for scientists to try. And
but to address that point, it's worked in animals, but has this method been tried successfully on other vaccines?
No, this is actually would be a first. Only because so much effort is being focused on the injectable vaccines.
mRNA.
And you have to understand the yeast that I will be using was only just made 2 or 3 years ago. It's been under development for 15 years, but only recently has the technology has reached the level where we can do it, and we can even do it here in the Philippines, which is why I'm excited to bring my research to the Philippines.
So pag nangyari yan, Father, over the counter ba yan?
You probably will never be over the counter because it's just like it will have to be approved by the FDA in the Filipinas, and it would probably be classified as a drug.
Oh, I see.
But Father,
Excited kasi. Akala niya, inom na lang siya ng beer eh.
so Father, just to be clear, Father, this is a delivery system, or this is the vaccine itself? I mean, it's a delivery system.
It's a vaccine. It's totally a vaccine.
Vaccine that's existing.
It's a vaccine. No. So what we'll do is it's a vaccine delivery system. So the yeast will deliver the molecules that you need to mount an immune response. So before it be injected, now you just swallow it.
So you have an existing vaccine, and then that's what you
So it's the same part that the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines have, but we took a smaller part of what they inject into your body and we put them into the yeast.
Other issue of research being subjected to peer review.
So what happens is we will do the experiments and then of course we will have to submit for peer review. But right now this is preclinical work. So we just have to I'm returning to the United States hopefully next month or the following month depending upon the pandemic there to finish the yeast work and bring the yeast to the Philippines.
Okay, now I want to bring back Professor David. Again, diving into the data of OCTA Research, are there particular regions that outside of NCR that you are concerned about?
Well, actually, right now, the main focus talaga is NCR. I mean, there is Davao City. It's not really increasing, pero it's not decreasing as much as what we want it to be. And although the positivity rate in Davao City has improved a lot, so it's now down to about 7%. And then there's also Isabela, which is also a region of concern. So they are experiencing an increase in number of cases. And aside from that, I think it's just Angkayan in Benguet. Most other places, well, there are some places like Pampanga which are seeing a slight uptick, but most other places are getting better, improving. Even Ilocos Norte, a few weeks ago, it was one of the areas of concern, but now it's drastically improved. They have a very low positivity rate. Areas in Mindanao are also improving. Areas in Cebu, except maybe Leyte, they're all improving. They're all getting better. I mean, Baguio City has improved a lot, so they have a low 7% positivity rate this week. So that improved because of the increased testing, and their cases are also decreasing. So right now the focus talaga is NCR, and things are not bad. It's just starting. This is just the start of the change in the trend. So if we're looking at the number of cases, and people ask me, so mataas ang cases? Well, they're still low. They're still less than 400 per day in Metro Manila, but they are starting to go up. And this is the time when we can still change it, or we can just let it, run its place, run its course, and then let's see by January, first week of January, where we are at. If things are getting really bad, if cases increase to about 600, 800, then I think we really need to scale back some of our interventions and make, have a more stricter, not a quarantine, but just, rolling back some of the interventions like the curfew and social distancing. I think that's enough because October, that's what we were doing, pero we reduced the R0 to 0.66 just by wearing face masks, social distancing. So we can do it again if we need to.
Yeah, but curfew, social distancing, reopening the economy, that's common throughout the country. But can you isolate the trends and the performance, particularly in areas that are really tourism driven? Palawan, Bohol, Boracay, and Baguio for that matter.
Well, we haven't seen a drastic increase or even an increase in cases. I think maybe Oriental Mindoro had a slight uptick, but there hasn't been a big increase, and I think it's because even though we open tourism, not a lot of people are flocking to tourist areas in general because I think people are still aware that virus is still here. From Manila, I mean, when we look at the historic and other places, parang wala ng virus, but I think in tourist destinations, or maybe it's an economic problem, so I'm not sure what the cause is.
Professor, seeing what you're seeing now sa Divisoria, you mentioned the crowding in Metro Manila. What's your projection for the end of the month? Meron na ba? End of the year, end of the month.
Yeah, well, we actually have a projection. I think it's going to be closer to the upper range of our original projection, so 500,000 cases by end of the year for Metro Manila. It could go up higher than that. I mean, 500,000 in the whole Philippines, total number of cases. It can end up a bit higher than that if cases increase faster than we would like it to be. So, pero yeah, we'll have updated projections probably by next week. Kaya ang vacation na yata yun. So,
Kaya ako muli na namin ngayon.
Prof, that the real numbers will be felt in early January or the first half of January. In the numbers that are the result of the holiday season. So when you said po kanina, when Father Nick said kanina 1.1 possible R naught or model ng R naught by New Year, are we talking about the likely scenario or the worst case scenario?
actually, it's higher than 1.1. I think it would be maybe 1. Because it's increasing by about 0.01. Yeah, maybe 1.2, something like that. It's the more likely scenario. The worst case scenario would be a higher R naught. In terms of the total number of cases per day, the new cases per day, will probably not be. We might be getting maybe 700 cases, 600 to 800 cases per day by early January in Metro Manila, and that doesn't sound drastic. It's not. But the problem is the trend. If we let it get out of hand, we'll be back in the situation in July. We were in the exact same situation in July. Cases were about 800 to 1,000, where the trend was going up, and we were not able to stop it. So pagdating ng August, we were at 2,000 cases, and it was time out for the health workers. So we want to avoid that kind of situation. So before it gets to that, kailangan agapan na yung problema, so to speak.
Okay, Professor Guido David and Father Nick Austriaco of the research team. Once again, thank you for. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening and Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Professor.
And we continue this conversation. Joining us now is Public Health Advocate Dr. Tony Leachon. Good evening, Doc.
Good evening. Good evening. Hi, Ed, Robbie, and Ruth, and Anna Marie. Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat.
Yeah.
Doc, government is now contemplating allowing face-to-face classes in low-risk areas. We have to emphasize that. Your thoughts on this?
Well, the first thing is that the requirements would be there should be lower number of cases in the schools or in the LGU where the academic institutions are actually located. Number two, we need to ensure the safety of the teachers as well as the students. Number three is about the infrastructures. Are the infrastructures ready right now? Whether they would actually change the standard designs in order to adjust to the new normal. And number four, will the DepEd work with the DILG in case there will be problems? So these are questions that we need to answer. And perhaps number five, as a suggestion, is to do a pilot study in certain academic institutions where you can easily close down just in case there will be a surge in the number of cases. And this has been done in other countries, particularly Korea and Singapore and other areas. So I think these are basic questions that we need to answer before we actually start with the face-to-face sessions in the educational area.
And Doc, another basic question. Malinaw ba yung definition ng low-risk area? And if so, what is it?
Well, I always base my definition based on what the OCTA, because every 2 weeks the OCTA research group would give me, and I would actually follow them based on their attack rates, their hotspots, and everything. And they're pretty accurate in actually projecting the particular hotspot. So to me, the hotspots right now would be, of course, we're in a downward trajectory at the National Capital Region with some certain areas. Not for today. There are 4 National Capital Region cities right now with active. We have the Calabar zone, and then you have the Central Luzon. And in the peripheral areas, you have problems, of course, in Davao City, some areas Iloilo or Cebu. So I think we need to understand that if ever we would do this, we need to check, of course, the number of cases and the surges. The other area that they need to check on is in the northern Luzon, Pangasinan, Benguet, Isabela, and Cagayan because of the post-typhoon unintentional breach in the protocol for the social distancing. And of course, because of the holiday rush, they need to consider them as well.
Doc, may mga ng konti. You were the subject of some discussion between Harry Roque and John Carlito Galvez. I'm sure you've heard about it. And nasabi pa ni Tony Harry Roque in public was that ilang beses po ko inamura ng Pangulo dun sa kanyang mga addresses pero in-edit out. Sabi nga niya, next time hindi na niya papa-edit out. Would you have an idea kung ano po yung mga nangyari? Bakit kayo nagalit sa inyo yung Pangulo?
Hindi ko alam kung talagang nagalit ang Pangulo because I will not name names but merong isang cabinet secretary na tumawag sa akin na hindi naman dinidiscuss ang pangalan ko during the discussion. And then Senator Coda Poso, very close to the President, hindi naman daw ginagawa ng Pangulo yun. In fact, after my state as a National Tax Advisor, National Task Force, I was invited by the President twice, even after my NTF stint. Ngayon, just in case talagang nagalit ng Pangulo doon sa question ko, well, I think I have to face it because ang interest ko naman is efficacy and safety. And as a medical...
Yes, I understand this has to do with a vaccine, no? And
my question,
I think you were
on the focus on the Sinovac, when the Sinovac hindi pa nakakatapos ang phase 3 trials, and based on the interview of the vaccine star with Karen Davila on Thursday, December 10, I was able to watch it. How come that we're so focused on the Sinovac, the Chinese vaccine, when phase 3 trials are not yet finished, walang EUA, walang FDA approval, walang EMEA approval, when we know for a fact that sa UK, sa Canada, sa Bahrain, sa Mexico, and even the US as of yesterday, na-start na yun. So I was thinking, why will we start, we will receive daw yung vaccine sometime in March, and why will we do that kung wala pa tayong approval internationally from reputable regulatory agencies like the FDA or the EMEA, or let's say an EUA at the local level, or even, let's say, in a peer-reviewed journal, makita natin ang methodology. Bothered lang ako ng konti kasi since there's right now the loss of trust and confidence na globally because of misinformation and fake news, and even sa atin, acceptance rate natin ay 66%, apparently because of the Denmark scare. So why are we focused on something, let's say a Chinese vaccine, not to demean or degrade their choice, but basically, kung isang compound or vaccine, dapat ang emphasis natin is on efficacy and safety. Yun ang basic concern eh. And nung tinanong sila ng press, I was following up on Twitter, bakit hindi sinagot yung efficacy and safety? And then they actually deviated by telling all of these things na out of context eh. You just basically ask or answer the question about the efficacy kasi everybody in the world alam na efficacy rate ng Pfizer 95%, ang Moderna 94.5%, ang AstraZeneca 70%. And then the other comment, they notched a deal sometime in November with Astra, and then suddenly the next day na-question dosing regimen nila. So they're left hanging right now. So ako naman, wala namang masama doon sa intention ko. Is my pinost ko lang naman yan. I'm not an important person. Natanong lang yan. Tinanong ko lang, ano bang efficacy rate niyan? Ano ang safety data niyan? Meron na ba siyang EUA? May FDA na siya to be considered for us to order? And then in volume sometime in March without any local FDA approval. I think that's a valid question.
From your perspective po, why would the apparent preference for the China vaccine?
I really
In your
don't
perception.
understand. I really don't understand. But when I saw the budget allocation do sa Senate at the office of Senator Angara, which is on Twitter, lumalabas yung Sinovac lumalabas $60 per dose. Yung Moderna, $32. Ang Pfizer, $20 per dose. Yung CoronaVax, $29 per dose. Ang J&J, $10. Yung AstraZeneca, $4. So, ang question ko, without any efficacy and safety data and no FDA approval elsewhere in the world, and then nag-start na sila ng vaccination in China without finishing the FDA, the phase 3, bakit ganon? So, it begs some, answers. At this afternoon also, I think the Senate filed a resolution of the whole in order to discuss ito at talagang makita. Kasi ito dapat ito transparent. If you heard about the US FDA Pfizer hearing, public hearing siya open, naka-Facebook and all. And the vaccine committee of the FDA talagang tinanong yung questionnaire scientist ng Pfizer at madaming nagtatanong before it was granted EUA approval for immediate vaccination since the cases in the US have gotten into orbit. So, yun ang problema natin ngayon.
Doctor, sabi ni Carlito Galvez nakatira ka daw sa sarili mong mundo, you're living in your own world. But anyway, you worked with IATF before. Can you tell us if are enough questions being asked about this vaccine, about the procurement, about the process of speeding up? Kasi pati yung mga businessmen gusto nila, bilisan na yan kasi ang bagal-bagal na ang ekonomiya natin bumabagsak na. And they want the procurement to be speeded up. Ang Singapore in-approve today yung Pfizer.
Yeah. I understand. I have the highest respect for Secretary Galvez. If I live in a different world, it is because I'm a medical person with a different perspective. So, ang tingin ko, wala namang masama if you're a devil's advocate and you challenge the status quo. Being a physician with experience and, skills for so many years. So, wala namang masama na if you want to challenge the status quo for the good of the country. If I live in a different world, I live in a different world based on science and research. Perhaps that's the basic understanding ko nito. Now, other countries talaga nagmamadali. Pero, ang rate limiting step, ang order ng mga other countries, a deal with those with regulatory documents. Let's say Japan, China, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore. Lahat sila umorder. No, may Australia, South Korea nag-increase pa. Sa Pfizer. Ang ibig sabihin, lahat ng inaproban nila may regulatory document na from reputable regulatory agencies, European medical agencies and FDA.
Yan yung pinupush, doctor, ng mga businessmen natin, Management Association of the Philippines. They want to speed up the procurement of these vaccines na approve na ng FDA, ng reliable FDA of other countries. Sa tingin nyo, can our process of procurement be speeded up pa?
Yes.
Magalan ba kayo? Tama natin.
Ang nangyari kasi, because there's limitation, let's say, sa costing, mura, and then walang cold chain facility problem with Astra. So they went to the choice of lesser resistance. Okay, ito, mura to, number one, accessible to, walang cold chain. Hindi ganon. The best product, i-ensure mo that the logistics are there. Ikaw ang gagawa ng paraan. When you have a compound at i-deliver sa iyo, is the responsibility of the country na mag-produce ng freezer farms and then logistics. Meron naman yan Nagawa nga yan sa UK na ang tawag nga doon blitzkrieg launch kasi tahimik sila. Bigla nilang in-approve ng National Healthcare System ng UK. Then kinuha yung sample from Germany. Yung pala, ready na yung kanilang logistics. Dapat doon, nire-ready natin. Not because there's a limitation on the best product in the market, then we will not order that. Of course, the country mau-offend the manufacturer kasi yun not siya deal with Astra. na wala pang EUA, walang FDA. Here we are, we're the front runner and we're supposed to launch it anytime. So, nahuli ka sa pag-queue up. So, meron pang chance. If you show, let's say, passion and commitment that you want to order through channels, bibigyan ka ng countries sa mga to, provided you should show the preparation as well so that the drug will not fail. Kasi, kunyari, ako yung produkto, hindi ka nakatulong sa herd immunity. Eh di, ikaw din, mawawalan ng relevance yung produkto mo. Dapat isipin natin yun. And then the other way is that if you want faster herd immunity, why don't you concentrate in the National Capital Region, Calabarzon and Central Luzon, na may 70% ka para magka-herd immunity so that you can actually fast-track everything. And then, ang mga freezer farms na yan, pagka-landing in several apat na airport ang gawin mo, and then meron ka na doong freezer farm, and then deliver it right away like a blitzkrieg through the military skills of Secretary Galvez, Secretary Anyo, and Secretary Lorenzana. You have to actually present a...
No, are you saying, excuse me, are you saying that they're not doing that? Setting aside the fact, setting aside what you said, that they seem to be favoring Sinovac, setting aside that, what
I'm not saying that.
are you
Kaya
saying
lang kasi,
they're
Ruth,
not doing?
Ruth, alam mo, in other countries, very transparent day to day kung ano mangyayari. Meron pang mga infographics on what they will do. And I think that's the essence of the resolution of the Senate para magkaroon ka ng transparency, no? Doon ba sa matrix ng pag-order nila, do they consider efficacy and safety? Kasi may matrix yan may guidelines and you put scores on that cost, cold chain, efficacy and safety. But paramount should be efficacy and safety. May regulatory document na. Kung wala ito, kahit mura siya at kahit may cold chain facility siya, nandun siya sa dulo dapat at the bottom siya. Because wala siyang regulatory document It's all about efficacy and safety So I think dapat clear to the public right now kung ano yung comparative analysis mo, and this should be shown to the public. Kasi hindi naman to mandatory, it's voluntary. So you can actually decrease the anxiety of the people if we are transparent on how we will order and procure this and distribute this.
So, yeah. Well, as far as we know, they've already, they're in the process of issuing a clearance for Pfizer, AstraZeneca. They're just, especially now that may emergency use authority na rin sa ibang bansa for these, no? So I don't know exactly what your issue is with what you say the government is not doing, except for the fact that you're saying they're not being transparent. But we've guested them here, and they have set aside 72 billion for the vaccines. They're now in process studying the vaccines that are available now abroad. They're just waiting for the studies abroad to be made accessible to them here. So what are they doing wrong exactly that you seem to be very critical of how they're approaching this?
Hindi naman, kasi if you listen to the tape interview of Karen and Secretary Galvez, he was asked, what would be the first vaccine sa first to arrive in the country? And he answered that the Chinese vaccine. When asked by Karen if China vaccine would be the first to roll out in the Philippines, the answer was in the affirmative. He mentioned also that Sinovac Biotech, if they will sign the contract by December, dadating sila sa March. Now, doon ako nagtaka Kasi wala pang approval sa abroad. Wala ka pang EUA sa US. How come it will be arriving in March? Di ba? It's a question right now. Ang hirap-hirap magpa-approve ng produkto right now. So, yun ang mga questions ko. So, may mixed messaging ang nakikita ko, Ruth, no? So, ako, I apologize for these questions. Luchi, I apologize for that. But, siyempre, nag-iisip ka as a person, as a medical expert, how come it will actually be coming by March when when internationally wala kang FDA, wala kang EUA, wala ka pang local FDA. Ibig mo sabihin, gagawin na agad yung mga bakunang yun in a month's time. Ibig sabihin, pre-order yun na talagang alam mo lalabas na safe yun. How come in March, you don't want a Dengbaksya na na-approvean December of 2016, tapos andyan na yung order February? Ibig sabihin, ginawa na yan 6 months ago. In order na yan. Kasi hindi mo naman pwedeng yung million of doses magawa mo in 1 month. Eh. And how sure are we that the safety profile will be acceptable to the epidemiologists and public experts? Hindi natin nakikita pa yan published like Astra and Pfizer in reputable journals. Those are questions that we need to understand. I'm not against anything of that. Mga tanong lang, critical questions that we need to answer. Ako, I have nothing against. The failure, ayoko sila mag-fail because the failure of the government will be the failure of the country. And if we fail and the people will suffer, kawawa naman tayo. We've been suffering for almost 10 months, lahat na nag-sacrifice na for this pandemic, and only 6 months na hinihintay natin to about 9 months. I think we should do it right the second time around. So if we fail, let's say, in the March of last year, in terms of building up healthcare capacities, I think we should not fail this time because everybody is actually hopeful, anchoring on the right vaccine based on efficacy and safety.
Dok, so sinasabi niyo na preferential purchase na yung hindi pa nga na-approve ng kahit kanino.
Right. Yeah. Totoo naman po.
Yeah, but Doc, just to here, I mean, is it possible, because there's two dilemmas even as far as the public is concerned. The efficacy and the safety is going on one track, and then the other question people have is, pagka nandiyan na, ready na, it's proven safe and effective, are we already in line? And that's one thing that people were questioning with government. They said, yan na yung Pfizer, and now it turns out on this other track na huli tayo sa pila. Is it possible that the track on Sinovac is trying to address both at the same time, where government is hedging a bit, notwithstanding, because they have also said that regulatory protocols will still be in place, notwithstanding negotiations for being in line for this Chinese line.
Yeah, I understand. But sa akin, first things first, present to me efficacy and safety data. Then, dun tayo mag-usap. Wala tayong i-discuss if you don't have efficacy and safety data. And then, dun tayo mag-order.
Yeah, I mean, no debate there. But ang point ko lang is, this is now on the other foot, diba? Because that's what happened with Pfizer and AstraZeneca and all the others. Diba? Government said, let's wait for all the data and let's all wait for all the clearances. Tas pagka nandun, that's what. But they got criticized that way also.
No,
diba?
ang strategy dyan is to have multiple deals with those pharmaceutical companies na may surefire efficacy and safety data. Why will you deal with the pharmaceutical companies na wala kang clear path on the efficacy and safety? So ang may clear path right now would be Pfizer, Moderna, and Astra, very close to the FDA approval. And then pag nakapag-present ang China sa atin ng EUA, even in the international regulatory agency, then we can actually order. Kaya lang, umorder ang Indonesia, ginaya natin siguro. Umorder ang Indonesia ng napakalaki. So, not because the other countries are doing it. Brazil, umorder din. But, you know naman, Brazil, nagkaroon ng COVID yung presidente nila. So, this is my problem eh. Ang problem lang natin ngayon, if you're trying to, say, Indonesia already reserved 1.2 million doses China over the weekend, and another 1.8 million doses sent out in January, and that's Indonesia. I mean, in Indonesia, by the way, kung gagayahin natin yung template nila, it is not the usual approach like in other G20 countries. So sa akin, haste makes waste. Pag pumanhin nyo yung comment ko, I'm only for the safety of our brothers and sisters in the country. And sa akin, kailangan natin masagot yung efficacy and safety data.
All right. Okay.
former National Task Force Advisor, Dr. Tony Leachon. Doc, maraming salamat po for joining us again tonight.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat,
Salamat po.
Luchi. Maraming salamat, Anam. Maraming salamat, Ed. Maraming salamat, Robbie. And thank you for the opportunity to clarify certain things. Then, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas po.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, and before we leave, again, congratulations to our colleague who got the palangka ba? I didn't. Sorry. Was named, one of the People of the Year by,
Here.
what was that again? by
Yeah.
People Asia. Yeah.
People Asia.
Of course, we're talking about Ana Marie Pamintuan. And that will be all for this special edition of the Chiefs. We hope to discuss here. We'll keep the conversation going. I'm Edling Gaupon News.
I'm Rani Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Luchi Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News.